Believe it or not, I do actually work around here. Today, I'm going to be installing the engine back in this customer's 2019, I think, STI. Now, the story on this thing is the dealership I used to work at incorrectly installed the engine air filter. Now, this is the story. I don't know this to be factual, but they did not install the engine air filter correctly, and this thing sucked in a lot of dirt. Don't know if it caused this, but probably a pretty good relation. So these are the exhaust valves. They're super thin here. This one, if you can see it, it's almost kind of warped. That's because it started to get almost like pulled into the cylinder head because it got so thin, and it also got hot and probably warped like that as well. Either way, that valve is tuliped, and it had a ton of leak down on cylinders 1 and I think 3, which were the ones with these really thin exhaust valves. Now, here is the engine all put back together. It is still pretty gross looking. I did clean out the intake and our turbo inlet boot there. Actually, had a little bit of crusties there, but we got a new remanufactured VF48. A new timing belt. I had the heads dropped off at the machine shop, got them resurfaced, got all new valves ground in and everything. So this thing should be perfect now. The valves were vacuum checked and everything as they should be. Now it's time to drop this thing back in the car. We got the car moved over to the 2-post. Got the engine pretty much ready. I'm gonna put the chain on it, lift it up, and then I got to put on our flywheel and the pressure plate and clutch disc, and then we put the throwout bearing on the snout of the trans. There's a little pin in there for the the arm clutch fork is what I'm trying to say, and then that all gets held together, and then the throwout bearing snaps into the pressure plate when the engine's installed. So our main test here is that this alignment tool slides easily in and out, which it does, so that should make engine install fairly simple and easy. So our next step is to take this jack stand, put it under the transmission so that it's raised up so we can get the engine mated to the trans. We'll lift it all back up and set the engine down in the car and bolt it all up. I've got our transmission lifted up. Now I'm just moving the stud for our hood prop so that it puts the hood in service mode so we have more room to get this engine in. And then we reconnect this here. And then we have a lot more angle, a lot more room to finagle this thing in there. Most people who have removed an STI engine for the first time and not watched a tutorial have probably ran into this issue right here. What I mean by that is this pin holds in our clutch fork, which has to be removed to get the engine out. That is because the throwout bearing clips into the pressure plate. It clips in right there because this is a pull style clutch. It pulls instead of pushes on these STIs and WRXs of the earlier years. But to reinstall this, we actually install the throwout bearing to the transmission first, lube this pin back up and put it in, and then once the engine and trans are mated, you push the clutch or push the clutch fork and it snaps back into the pressure plate. And this is obviously a new throwout bearing. Anytime I do an engine, I always do a new throwout bearing in a manual car because they wear out super fast, and it's always a good idea since you have to remove the whole engine to replace that. All right, so here's a good shot of it all installed. That's exactly how it goes before we put this engine in. And like I said, once the engine's in, we will push on this and it'll clip right into our pressure plate. Now, anytime you're installing a new or used engine, this is the same short block that came out of this car, so it doesn't really apply here. Don't forget about these dowel pins, because you'll run into it a lot of times where they get stuck in the transmission or they get stuck in the engine. And if you have a brand new short block, it comes with these dowel pins already installed. And if you have some stuck in your transmission, it's not gonna go together. However, it's pretty easy to remove them. You just take a punch and a hammer, smack those out. Make sure you got both of them on the engine. They're very important because they are alignment pins. If you don't have them, it can cause a misalignment between the engine and transmission and cause that front bearing of the input shaft to go out. Or if you have like a automatic, it can cause the bushing to go out that holds in the torque converter. It's not good, so make sure those are installed. So now it's time to get this thing mated back up to the tranny. So let's go ahead and put you guys on a time lapse and get that done. Now we've got the engine pretty close to mated up. Now what I do is I put the car in gear and I turn the crank pulley and watch the front wheels and make sure they start to spin. That means that your splines are engaged. And when they're this close, they're this far sucked up, it's pretty much fully engaged. I shouldn't say that, I guess. It's pretty close. You can slowly draw it together with the bell housing bolts. I've done it a million times. And you just got to be careful, make sure it doesn't bind up or anything. So I always start with one of these top bell housing bolts and then one down near the bottom so it kind of draws it together evenly. You'll notice as I slowly draw this together, the other side is also going to start coming together. And I just go nice and slow here. Now I'll finish that up by hand and we'll get the rest of the bell housing bolts in and drop this thing down, lift it up and do everything on the bottom. When you go to engage the throwout bearing with the pressure plate, you do have to push pretty hard on this clutch fork here back towards the firewall. When I say hard, like I take a pry bar or a screwdriver and I push with all my might and it'll eventually just kind of click in and it will have pressure going towards the front of the car so that you won't be able to, pull it back out. Then you just go inside the car, test out the clutch, make sure it's working good. So now moving under the car, I start by putting in our starter, and I've got this long extension wobbly socket from Snap-on that I use to get all these bell housing bolts. And you guys will notice the turbo's not bolted down yet. That's pretty important to be able to get the engine in, because this ear on our flange on the rear of the turbo will hit on the bell housing and won't really be copacetic for installation. But all I really need to do under here is put in the rest of the bell housing bolts, do our engine mount nuts, and then I got to put the downpipe back on, and that's pretty much it. Once I install the radiator, of course, I'll lift the car back up, reconnect these to the fans. I will also install our lower radiator hose and new thermostat, and also before I drop it down, I'm going to install our ground straps there and reinstall the AFR sensor, because that also has to be removed when removing the engine. Come on, bugger. There's about 2 Ugga-Duggas worth of torque. Can you stop bothering me? We got this goon over here doing body work, acting like this is a proper body shop. You even know what you're doing?
No recording.
He just came out of the closet. He doesn't really like being recorded as of right now. It's a sensitive time for him. Now do yourself a favor, if you're reinstalling an AFR sensor, put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads, because they're gonna seize up eventually, someday, but maybe this will prolong it a little bit. These are always difficult to get back in. I might need 2 hands for this. AFR sensor is in. Last step now, I just removed the rear oxygen sensor from the cap, because this car had a P0420 code, and we are installing a brand new NVIDIA catted downpipe. So I need to swap this over. I'm gonna go grab that cat out of the box, get it assembled, and get it put in this car. What do you want?
Yeah, I was wondering, you guys do like cob tubes here and stuff?
Dude, I think you blew a head gasket.
No, I was looking for a stage 3 on the
You
outside.
better just get out of here, brother. This ain't the shop for you. Gosh, some Subaru guys, I tell you. Anyways, here's our nice, beautiful catted downpipe from NVIDIA. I gotta put the gasket on, and then this thing's getting tossed up there. Now, what's this guy bringing in here? Brother, this ain't Larry's chop shop, okay? We don't work on anything and everything around here. Gosh, this guy keeps bugging me. Whoa! Hey. Probably moved my really expensive jump pack. Whoa! All right, you're way good. Holy shit, brother. You might want to back up a little bit. Oh. A little more. You good? Wow. 20 minutes later. Now back to the important task at hand. I've got our up pipe bolted down to the turbo. Now we're gonna lift it back up finally, put on that. We'll be almost completely done underneath and we can button up the top. We've got the downpipe in. I've got our bottom nuts on there. Now we can finally drop this thing down and button up everything on top and it'll be pretty much ready to fire up. As you can see, I put the camera down for a little while and kind of just buttoned up the top of the engine bay. I got pretty much everything together. The only things left are the intake, which still needs to be cleaned out. I cleaned out the intercooler and all the piping for it. And then I got to put the radiator in, the battery, fill it with fluids, and we're ready for the first fire. I just pre-filled the oil filter with some Schaefer's 530, check marked it, and double checked the torque on our drain plug gasket. I always mark my initials on there so I know that they were checked. I put a little check mark there. So then there's no second guessing. Now I'm gonna drop it down, fill the rest of it up with some 530, and then fill our cooling system. We got that good stuff going in. You know it's good oil when the color is not golden. You got green oil going in there. Engine oil is full. Now I am running a vacuum test on the cooling system, and we're gonna get some new blue Asian coolant in there. Now moving inside the car, I will hold down the clutch and the throttle all the way so that we can crank for oil pressure. Don't do that on any cable controlled throttle body, only do it on the electronic throttle bodies. So I do 2 cycles, and that's enough to get oil moving through the engine. As you see, the oil pressure light just went out. Almost forgot to put the fuel pump fuse back in. So I'm gonna key on a couple times to prime the fuel system. Work out bubbles. When we crank this time, should fire right up. Perfect. I always let my cars run for a couple seconds and then I come up and check underneath, make sure we have no fluid spilling out. There's a little bit of coolant from the heater hose lines when I put those back on. But we're looking good. So I'm gonna put this thing on a battery tender and we're gonna put on the first base map tune on this thing and then get some revisions for it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This engine's installed, it runs. I'm gonna go take it on a little test drive once we get the tune figured out, and I'll update you guys shortly. So it's day 2. We are test riding the second tuning revision on this car. Now I'm gonna go take it for its first test drive and log a bunch of parameters, send them off to the tuner, and he will send us back another map. And hopefully it's the final one, and then I can return this back to the customer. All right, guys, as you see, I'm back at the shop now, and I'm not in the STI. It is done. The tuner said it's good to go, so I am going to release that car back to the customer. And you'll see here our next shop project. This is Brendan's 240. It's got a 6-liter LS, and this thing chooched the harness. So I'm gonna have to go through, wire in this new Holley Terminator X-Max system. Should be pretty simple, and get this thing ready to get back on the road for him. However, that's gonna be in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment on what we should work on next. See ya.